Hi, my name is Dean Atta and I'm a poet and the author of The Black Flamingo. I'm going to be talking to you in this video about editing. You might have written lots, but maybe you haven't taken the time to edit it. And I think editing is where a lot of the real work is done with any writing. This book took me about 6 months to write and then another 6 months to edit. So there's a lot of time goes into editing and it's worth it, trust me. So I've come up with 10 questions that can help you when you're editing a piece of work. This can be something that's brand new or something that's been sitting around for a while and you want to go back to it and make sure it's doing everything it possibly could to be the best poem it can be, to make sure your readers really understand what you're trying to say. Sometimes we know what we're trying to say, but we haven't actually achieved that in the poem. And that's not through any fault of our own, but we've maybe not paid attention to some of the details and some of the things that can help a reader really understand what our poem is trying to say and trying to do. So I have these 10 questions for you. You'll also be able to find them written down. I've produced a written version of this for the National Literacy Trust, so you'll see it on their website as well. But I thought it'd be nice to talk you through them because sometimes just seeing something written down, it doesn't hit home the same way as someone telling you or explaining it to you. So by way of explanation, I'm going to go through each question and then kind of tell you a bit more about what I mean by it. So the first question that we'll look at is number 1, what is the most important line of your poem? So thinking about your poem and thinking about all the lines that it contains. This could be a short poem, this could be a longer poem, but there'll be this one line that sticks out to you. I call it a striking line, and I picked that up from a friend of mine and a mentor called Peter Khan. And he always got us to look at what is the striking line, what line is doing the most work, what line stands out like a celebrity in your poem. So that's something you want to think about when you look at your poem. What's that line? Maybe you're most proud of it, or maybe it's just the most impactful line that really says what you're trying to say in your poem. So look for that line and find out what can be done to support the line. So are there lines that kind of build up to it? Are there lines that come after it? And do they help that line to shine, or could some of it be taken away and more focus be given to that special line? You could put that line at the beginning of your poem or the end of your poem or bang in the middle of your poem at a point where things change because that line changes the meaning of what you're writing about. So there's lots of things that can be going on with that important line, and it's for you to decide what it is. No one else can really tell you, although you might want to show your poem to someone and ask them what they think is the striking line and then see if you agree or disagree with them. So that could be a fun thing to try out. The next question, question 2, is how do the title and first line create intrigue? So I'm thinking about how you present your poem on the page so that at the top you usually have the title, and that's going to be the first thing anyone sees. So is it something that's going to be intriguing? Are people going to be interested? So for example, if your poem was about a bus, you could just call your poem Bus. But if you want to make it more intriguing, you could say something about the bus. So for example, it could be the school bus of doom. So now people want to know, why is it the school bus of doom? And also they have that extra information of knowing it's not just a bus, it's a school bus. Things like that really help your reader to know what your poem is going to be about. You don't always have to have a title that tells you exactly what the poem is going to be about, but it could be giving a clue, an introduction, a way into the poem. So that's what titles do. And I'd say, where possible, don't repeat information in your first line that's already in your title. Let the title set the scene and then you're straight into the action, whatever the action of your poem is. Okay, so question 3 is, how could you evoke the senses in your poem? So thinking about the 5 senses, taste, touch, smell, sound, and sight, Did I get them all right? I think so. And then thinking how you can use those within your poem to evoke more of an immersive experience for your reader, so that they feel like they can actually smell it, they can actually taste whatever it is. Thinking about that bus again, being on a bus, can you smell people's BO? Can you smell lovely perfume? Do you feel like it's too noisy, or is it eerily quiet on that bus? Giving people a sense of the senses is really helpful to place them in the poem itself. So try and use at least 2 of the 5 senses, and I think that will help your reader to feel more immersed in your words. Number 4, how could you be more detailed or specific? So thinking about that, what is it that you're trying to describe in your poem? Don't just say hands, for example. Say what those hands look like, maybe even the texture of the hands. Are they rough, dry hands, or are they soft, smooth hands? Do they have long fingernails, short fingernails? Are they painted a bright colour? Or if they're painted, maybe the paint is chipping away, or maybe that person bites their nails and they're really short and they look really sore. And that could give a sense that the person that you're describing with those short, bitten, sore nails might be anxious about something. They might be a particularly nervous person, or they might be going through something, but you could put that in there without telling us all those things. It's show, don't tell. So you could describe someone's hands, and just through describing their hands, you could tell us so much about them. For example, they might have a ring on their finger. It could be a wedding ring or an engagement ring or another type of ring. So there's so many things you can do with hands. Just really focus in on those kind of details, and it will really help us to understand what you're trying to tell us. Number 5, where do you repeat yourself on purpose? So on purpose is really the most important thing here. What have you done in the poem with intention? So there are certain words you could repeat that might have a really big impact on your reader, or really draw them in. So for example, you could use the word listen and say listen, listen, listen. And by the 3rd time you said listen, I really want to know what it is I'm trying to listen to. So things like that could be really useful for your poem. You could say no, no, no. And we want to know why you're saying no. 3 is usually a good number of times to repeat something. More than that, it can get a bit intense, but you might be going for intense. So see what you can do with repetition. But try not to repeat yourself if you don't mean to do it. So repetition could be just using certain words over and over again. Words like love or happy or sad or pretty. But thinking about, if you use a certain word more than once, is there another way you could say that thing? So happy, let's use that as an example. Could you say instead cheerful or delighted? Or could you find a more intriguing way of saying happy, such as calling a happy person a smile machine or a laughter engine? Thinking of combinations of words that give you the sense of happiness without actually saying happy. That could be a really fun thing to play with, especially putting words together that might seem like they don't usually go together. Number 7 is what changes through the course of the poem. So this is about action. This is about what's going on in the poem. If you're on a bus, is it going on a journey? Does it reach that destination? Or is it more about the emotional journey of the passenger that's being the narrator of the poem? So thinking about how you're using change in the poem. It could be time of day. So time could be passing, the sun could be setting. Thinking about anything that changes during the poem, okay? It could be it's quiet and then suddenly it's noisy. That's a change. So thinking about change, and if there's no change in the poem, I mean, what's happening in the poem? Is it a poem about boredom? Even if nothing's happening, maybe we're getting increasingly more bored. So that is a kind of change, the fact that nothing's happening and still nothing's happening and still nothing's happening. The noticing of nothing happening, the description of the stillness could be described as a kind of changing, because we're getting more fed up with it, probably. And then this is about your reader now. Thinking about your reader, number 8 is, what do you want the reader to think by the end of the poem? So you're trying to put something in their mind. You're using these words, and maybe you want them to think about something in their own life. It could be their own experiences relating to bus journeys, or their own experiences to do with happiness. So thinking about what it is you want them to have in mind, not just your words, but also what it might evoke for them in their memories or their imagination. So you leave a poem and you carry on thinking about it. So what do you want your reader to think? It's a question, and just knowing that might help you look at what you are focusing on in the poem. It might help you get rid of stuff that doesn't serve that purpose as well. So just ask yourself that question and see what comes up. Number 9, what do you want your reader to feel by the end of the poem? So you could want them to feel happy. You could want them to feel a sense of joy and relief, some laughter. You could want to bring them up, but you could also want to bring them down. So you might want to make them cry. You might want to make them sad. You might want to make them feel something that you felt. And so that has to be done skillfully. You have to also be very generous with what you share with your reader, describing those feelings or setting the scene for them so that they can feel it for themselves. So that is something for you to decide. What do you want them to feel? Are you trying to lift them up, bring them down, or make them feel closer to you or to someone else? So that's something for you to think about. And then finally, what do you want the reader to know by the end of the poem? Knowledge is a funny thing. Knowledge is subjective, and knowledge is also based on our own experiences. So you have certain experiences that are kind of knowledge. So giving those experiences over in poetry, if you're writing about yourself or your own life, is a very generous thing to do. And giving people that knowledge of your life, maybe your family, maybe your inner world and what goes on in your mind and your imagination, maybe letting them know that they are part of something bigger than themselves. So letting them know that there's something going on outside that they need to pay attention to, or there's something going on inside that they need to pay attention to. What is it you want your reader to know by the end of your poem? You will know this probably inherently. You will know what you're trying to do. But asking yourself that question and answering that question may help you look at your poem again slightly differently. I hope those editing tips help, and I hope you, even if you don't change a single word in your poem, you understand it better for yourself.